Coming out of Maplewood High School as a freshman, I mean, he made an impact almost immediately on our program.
Probably one of the best players I played against in college. And I would throw in, even as an adult, pickup games, playing in camps. And I've played, guarded Bobby Hurley, Travis Ford, Allen Houston. David Suddeth could play. And he was probably the most threatening player I ever had to play against or guard. One, you knew he was trying to get 40 every night, and that's a scary guy to guard.
You could not guard him. I don't care who you were. I don't care how quick you were. I don't care how tall you are. Because David had a wide body. Inside, I don't ever remember him having one of his shots blocked. But he was so great and agile on his feet that you could not guard him one-on-one.
You knew when you stepped into the booth or to the table to do the game that you were going to see a show. Because when David had the ball in his hands, which was quite a bit of the time, David could take it off the wing, David could go to the hole. David doesn't get enough credit for the type of rebounder and even passer that he was. Everything rotated around David. He was the point forward.
He was the ultimate team player. He contributed wherever he was needed. Some players find themselves pigeonholing themselves into one role on a team. David wanted to win. Some of our teams may have struggled at times, but David's mindset never changed. He was there to win, and he would do what it would take to help our team win.
It's my senior year. I think we were about to play Trevecca in the tournament, started off the tournament, and Coach Bird comes into practice that day and says, "Hey, Scott, I want you to guard David Suddeth in the game." And for those that know me, my defensive stopper was not exactly my forte, but I said, "Okay, Coach Bird, if you think that's the game plan, I'll do the best I can." And in a lot of ways, I started thinking, you know, I'm a senior, he's a sophomore. All I got to do is stick with him, almost a boxing one mentality. I said, I got this. I still didn't quite understand why Coach Bird thought I was the guy to do it. But anyway, so the game starts, and I think first 3 possessions, he scores right over me. I really starting to question it. And as the game went on, it was a great game, back and forth. And I remember the game being over, and I was happy that we won. And I guess I was sort of happy that I held him to, I think, 34 points. It was just one of those, you know, I was trying everything humanly possible to even deny the ball, stay in front of him, whatever it was, and I just couldn't stop him. And he was that type of player. I mean, when he got hot, you were at his mercy because he could do anything he wanted.
One-on-one, you could not guard him. And I remember within the district, one of the assistant coaches at another school, I won't mention the school because the coach is a dear friend of mine, but anyway, he said, well, we got a player that's the best defensive player in the district, and he can shut Suddeth down. He can hold Suddeth under 10 points. And I said, well, okay. I said, well, we'll be playing you soon, you know. And well, come and behold, we play this team, and they ran what you call a box and one zone. In other words, they're in a box zone, and they're going man-to-man with David Suddeth. And I had him on the wing. Well, he wasn't getting the ball. The guy was doing a good job on him. So what I did, I put David at point and moved the other guy to the wing. David scored over 30 points. And this kid is good. He was an All-American. This kid was a good ball player. But you couldn't guard David.
I remember David just being such an electric presence on the floor, incredible leaping ability. I likened him to an NAIA version of Charles Barkley. He was a tremendous rebounder, had great leaping ability, ferocious dunker, but he was also a great shooter from the outside as well. He could take it out on the wing and run at a player and be at the rim before you know it, or almost like James Harden, he could do a little stutter step out there and then step back behind the line and lost the three. He was an amazing player.
The only specific memory of him is, and I pray you don't have the video on this, he probably tattooed me on a dunk worse than any player that ever did in my 4 years. I want to say we were playing at Belmont in like a holiday tournament, Christmas tournament or something. And this was before the block charge line, so I have no idea exactly how far out we were. But, you know, it was one of those deals where I'm kind of trying to step in to take a charge, and he just comes in, and you know, I felt like I was just looking at his knees, and he just, you know, tomahawk cuff dunked just right over me. Foul was on me, you know, so and one. Thankfully, you know, there was no overtime or no, you know, no other Instagram or Twitter feeds or anything like that, because I would have been, you know, I'd have been on SportsCenter Top 10 for the wrong reasons that day after he put that one on me. So, unfortunately, that's the most distinct memory I have of playing against him. Is he powdered me with the worst dunk I ever took in all of my 4 years.
If you need 2 or 3, we would run an option, and David could score. I mean, he could just flat out do it.
If he needed to score from outside, he'd score. If he needed to be on the post and be a post man, he would do that. And if he needed to facilitate for his teammates, he would do that. It was that way. And if David's here right now, we're probably looking for a ball to kick around the gym and play, and he's going to find some trick shot to beat me with in horse.
His freshman season was when we were in middle school. And we won't ever forget those times because he walked into McQuitty like he owned the gym. He did not back down from Belmont Lipscomb, and we love that. That kind of spurred, I guess, my brother and I, our dislike forever of Lipscomb and Belmont. We respect that school. I have plenty of friends at both schools, but there's something about David's swagger. He made Trevecca cool.
He liked everybody, and everybody liked him. And I know that all of these guys that he played with really thought so much of him, and he was a leader on the floor just by the way he played. And David was a very unselfish player. In fact, sometimes I wanted him to shoot the ball more.
Yeah, you know, the thing I think about most with people who score that many points, having given it some thought over time, is obviously you've got to be able to, you know, put the ball in the basket. But it's not just that. I mean, the second you start scoring 20, 25, 30 points a game, people are immediately going to start game planning for you. I mean, it's not like it happens in a vacuum. And so however easy it was when you first started doing it, it's not going to stay that easy. And by the time you get to be a sophomore, junior, senior, I mean, people have tried every defense in the books to try to stop you. And so there's that kind of ability of a good scorer to continue to develop their game to counter the counters that people are trying to use against them. And the other thing is quite frankly, just the straight consistency of being able to do it. I mean, just, you know, you've got to stay healthy. You've got to kind of take care of your business as a student athlete. So there's just a lot of things that have to do with consistency that you don't get there accidentally, and you don't get there intermittently. I mean, you just got to have sustained, consistent excellence in that area, or you'll just never make it. And so David certainly was one of those guys.
3,000 career points, 3-time All-American. It's no doubt he is a Tennessee basketball legend.
It's a very short list in college basketball of players that score 3,000 points. And I think when I look at a list, I say, oh my gosh, they must have been fantastic shooters. David was a good shooter. David wasn't a great shooter. David Suddeth was a scorer. He could put the ball in the hole from anywhere, anytime. He shot the three extremely well, but I still wouldn't say that he was a great shooter. David knew how to get the ball in the hole.
When you double up on David, that leaves somebody open. And he had such a good head for the game, he knew where to go. And he would go to the man that was open and make the pass and get the assist.
I was coaching Reggie at Austin Peay, and this little guy was always around. Little did I know he was going to be the next James Harden before James Harden came along. I call him kind of a poor man's James Harden because of the way he plays. He could take it to the basket, and he could shoot outside, and he had a quick release, and just really a good, smart, savvy player. And I think being Reggie's little brother probably helped that a lot, because he grew up Tommy Springer and Charles Davis and Roosevelt Sanders and some of those guys were in Reggie's heyday and in his era, and he got exposed to those guys.
Obviously, he was a southpaw. David could slash, he could dunk, pull-up jumper. David could pretty much do it all.
He just loved the game of basketball. And bring up whatever you got, you know. He could stand up to any challenge of any player that that's ever played for me.
David was a guy that easily could still be playing in today's game because he had the physical part of it too. I mean, he was such a tough matchup because he kind of athletic, physically strong, could score in kind of all three levels, outside, three-pointers, free throws, at the basket. So you couldn't find a very good matchup for him. Either you had a big guy who wasn't quick enough to stay with him on the perimeter, or you had a smaller guy who he'd go post up. And you see that a lot today with players too, the good ones. And so he was that kind of player. He was a little bit more ahead of his time probably than most players at that time who either, were just inside players, outside players, whatever. And then, you add to it, he was a rebounder. Sometimes guys who are good scorers, I mean, they could score, but they don't really rebound very well. But he was a great rebounder. He could handle the ball. He could dish it. It's funny. I don't know what his stat was for this, but I remember him being really good at just ball control, ball protection. I mean, he didn't make a lot of turnovers. I mean, he had the ball in his hands a lot. He did a lot of good things, but he didn't turn the ball over very much. And so, he was just one of those guys that you see today, guys that are getting triple doubles or close to them. And that was him. Maybe not quite as tall as some of the guys you see in the NBA or whatever today, but certainly had the physical tools, but also the basketball game to do that. And that just made for a very tough matchup when you tried to guard him.
The thing about David when he came in was that he could play all positions, and he could bring the ball down the court. He could pull up for a three-pointer, or he could go inside. So that was something that I thought was really unique about him. Not the size of a Magic Johnson, but the type of player that could play all positions.
Watching David play, he gave me the first clues about what I needed to do to accomplish the goal of becoming an All-American. He's locked away in my brain how easy he could score, all the different ways he could score, how he made the game of basketball look beautiful.
He was a quick jumper, and by that his reaction was so quick in everything that he did, and that made him play bigger than he was, because David had a 38-inch vertical.
I went to McGavick, he was at Maplewood, and so kind of that metro mindset of he walked into a gym and he owned it, and he was in charge. And so I loved that confidence that he had. And so just looking up to him, probably the biggest thing was confidence. My game, or a lot of people's game, do not mimic his game. He was unbelievable. He could do it all. He had no weaknesses. And but just, I think his persona was just so cool. And like I said, to this day, he still has that persona about him.
David was a really, really good outside shooter. Nobody looked at David and said, hey, he's a shooter. He's a shooter. They said he's a scorer, and that was true, but that's what probably separated him and set him off, is that he was able to be outside the three-point line, and he could knock down three after three after three, but nobody would scout him and say, we got to get him and run him off the line, because if you run him off the line, he was going to go to the rim. And he had such an exceptional touch that when he put the ball up on the rim, it may bounce 2 or 3 times and fall in. He had such a soft touch. And then if it didn't fall in, with his quick jumping ability, his wide frame, it shows in his stats. He had over probably 350 offensive rebounds.
David had such a great team concept, and that's what you got to have. If you want to be a winner, if you want to win that 20 plus a year, you got to have guys like David Suddeth that are willing to give the ball up and make his team better. He made his teammates better players, and You don't have those players all the time. If you get one out of every 10 years, hey, you're lucky, you know. And I know coming over here, I was talking with Jim about leadership, you know, and it's hard. It's hard to get those kids that have that innate ability and leadership that is infectious, and it reaches out to his teammates, you know, and when he makes them feel really special. And I really believe David was that kind of a ball player.
I mean, I think about a basketball player who had really no weakness, and the game came so easy to him. He was just very smooth offensively. He could do anything. He could shoot the three. He had the ability to post you up and, you know, do crazy things with that sweet left hand of his. And he just had a complete game. And I really liked the way he played too. You know, his demeanor was calm. He was always in control and very, very confident. And so he was a nightmare to match up with.
You know, like Trevecca wanted a piece of us really bad, and we wanted to show we're better than you. It was special competition. To be honest, we thought we were better, but we always felt threatened, and we knew Trevecca could get us. And so that never left me. I was always threatened, scared of Trevecca. When we played Trevecca, it was never, we got these guys. I grew up watching Avery play, Trey Suddeth play. He was great. And then David was right in that lineage of just unbelievably great, you know, put the whole team on your shoulders type players that were here at Trevecca. And you thought, man, if David goes off, we could lose.
He was a dream player for a coach, and he had such a great attitude. He really did. David, I have never, in all the years that he played here, I never saw him frustrated one time. Now, he might have been with me sometime, I don't know, but I never did notice it if that was the case. But of course, you know, what do you say to David Suddeth other than slap him on the back and send him out on the floor, you know?
We weren't buddies. You know, it was hardcore competition, but we had great respect for each other because we were great competitors and we could play basketball.
Very competitive. He was a winner. In a lot of games, he really willed his team to win. And you know, what I love about competing against him is he never shied away from that. I think he accepted that responsibility. He embraced that responsibility, which a lot of players don't. And so I think he was energized whenever there was a really good matchup against, you know, Trevecca, Belmont, Trevecca, Lipscomb, whatever it was. I think that always brought the best out of him, and that's what you want out of a competitor. The true competitors are those that rise to the toughest occasions, and David did that so many times over his career.
David could get on to you. He could tell you were doing something wrong, and nobody would take offense to it because they knew he did it through love, through respect. He wanted you to be better. He wanted the team to be better, and David would be the first guy to pick up a teammate.
I wanted to be an All-American. And I knew from things that my dad had told me from being at practices of my dad's teams when I was a kid, I saw how hard they worked. And it was seared in my brain, watching David, he's that good. He works as hard as he works. That's why he's that good. He gave me the first clues about what I needed to do to accomplish the goal of becoming an All-American.
In order to survive at Hartman Park, in order to survive at Ewing Park, in order to survive at Maplewood, you had to be extremely, extremely competitive, let alone someone like David who played early at all of those locations. Again, you were playing against people who were some of the better guys in the city, and it was no holds barred.
I don't know, when you evaluate players, you look at their weaknesses and their strong points, etc. But David never had any weak areas in his game. He was just a great offensive player, and I think his senior year, I know in the stats that I read that you had, he averaged 27, 28 points a game, and shot 58% from the field. Have you ever heard of a guard shooting 58% from the field?
Great competitor. One of the few players I'd play against put a little fear in me. Fear that, man, if this guy gets cooking and I'm a little off my game, he might put 40 on me and embarrass me. And I wanted to feel like I was the best player in the city, right? Especially one that grew up in the city. And even physically, man, he was bigger, stronger. He was a little mean. I mean, he competed. And so I knew if we got in a physical thing, I was probably gonna get the lower edge. So it really made me, it's kind of like doing Tai Chi or whatever, martial arts. I had to go with he made me a better basketball player. And he made me learn how to be more physical on the boards, be a better, point guard rebounder. I think David, that's why I wanted to do this. He added a lot to my life and to my, which much of my life is my basketball career. So I'm kind of indebted and I'm thankful. I'm grateful that I got to compete against him.
You could gear your entire defense to stop David, and he was still going to put up 25. He was going to figure out a way to get the ball in the hole.
Well, what made David difficult to defend is his ability to score in so many different levels. The three-point line, he had the ability to do that. He had the ability to ball fake, put the ball on the floor and get by you. And then he also had the size, the lower body strength, where he could do things on the block and post smaller people up, even larger people up, and still be able to get that jumper off or that left shot off. And he could go at you in so many different ways. And when you've got a player like that, it is almost impossible to defend when you're trying to get through ball screens or whatever. And so David, just the ability to score at so many different levels, made him basically unstoppable.
David was not afraid to do the dirty work. David was a guy that would dive on the floor. He was the guy that you would see diving, a la Derek Jeter in the stands and coming out bloodied. He's the guy that would go for every loose ball, and he was the star of the team. Make no mistake about it, David was the best player on the team while he was here, and he was not afraid to get his hands dirty, do whatever he could to give this team the best opportunity to win.
He could take you inside. He could pull up, shoot the jumper. All those different aspects made him a better player rather than somebody who you point guard penetrates and then kicks it out to the three and he sits there and shoot the three. Yeah, he could do that, but he also could take you off the dribble. He could pull up, and so he was dangerous as an offensive weapon.
He made those around him better because he put them in situations, because obviously everybody that we played against had to game plan for David Suddeth. Some teams, you say, well, I'm not sure who I have to game plan for, but you had to game plan for David Suddeth. He still had elevated stats, not just in points, not just in rebounds, but assists, steals, blocks, just everything he could do to help his team win.
He's actually in the top 5 in 17 of our categories and statistics for the NAIA years. And that's the thing, to be the leader in points by over 600, to be the leader in rebounds, and then for steals to be that close to the top, and assists. Those are 4 categories that just define a complete player.
He handled the ball a lot, so it wasn't like you could just deny him. I mean, a lot of times he'd just get the ball immediately, and then game on at that point. So, a very tough matchup. And again, sometimes guys are really athletic, they're really talented, they're dynamic, or whatever you want to call it, and sometimes being loose with the ball or out of control goes with that. And he wasn't that. I mean, he was under control, and that. You couldn't draw a bunch of charges on him or force him into a lot of silly turnovers or things like that, and so he could just really control the game that way. Very tough matchup because of that.
So I remember one game at Lipscomb, and Trevecca kind of thought they might could get us. We had been having the upper hand on them. Packed McQuitty gym. Trevecca came strong with their crowd base. It was electric. Great small college, 30,000 fans going nuts. And I'm guarding David, and I'm ready. I'm feeling up to the challenge. and I'm ready to guard him on the three-point line to get through screens, guard him off the dribble. He just goes right down to the low block. On the weak side, they run the whole offense on the side opposite him. Don't even put anyone over there. And it's basically, David, I want you to beat up on Jerry Meyer and control the weak side boards. Well, I was like, oh no. It's not what I was hoping for, because he had a lot of pounds on me and was taller and better athlete. And first shot goes up and he hit me so hard, man, hip checked me. I wasn't the strongest guy, but I could get down in a stance and be strong. I wasn't used to getting moved like that. And, I can think of a couple times in my basketball career where that happened, and there's not many, where you get that wake-up call. And it was like, game on. It's like, I processed. I was like, Jerry, tonight you're going to have to become a man. And you're not some little skinny point guard out there playing. You're going to have to battle this guy on the low block. So obviously I'm telling this story now. He enriched my life. I love a great competitor. I love to feel the fear of losing. And I don't mind the sting of it. And it makes the winning even better. And David brought that, I'm very grateful I got to compete against him.
We went down to Jimmy Swaggart Bible College in 1989, and he hit 7 3-pointers in that one, and we won 134 to 108. We had 50 points at the 10-minute mark in the first half. We were actually on pace for 200 points. And then he was just on fire that game.
He really ignited the whole gym. I mean, there were people there saying, who is that kid? Coaches were the same way. I mean, comments that I received after the game from some of the other coaches. Where'd this kid come from? This and that.
Of all the things that I remember about David's playing career, obviously I'm going to focus on the last game of his career, which was right here in Moore Gym against Freed Hardeman. And again, I was seated right over there at the scorer's table with the microphone in my hand. And I got hoarse, actually, calling his name so often and with such enthusiasm. He had an amazing game. I think he scored 52 points that day. And I think maybe his last shot, it's the last shot that I remember, was a pull-up 3 right over here in front of our bench that, it must have been 25 to 30 feet out. It barely across the half-court line, and he pulled up and launched it and watched the ball float through the net. And Coach Wilson did a good job of subbing out for him then and letting the crowd really, express appreciation not only for his performance that day, but for an amazing 4-year career. And I'll remember that for a long time.
We were playing Freed Hardeman. David was on fire that night, so to speak. He was knocking down shots. He was getting to the rim. He was playing so well. And those point totals were going up. And, somewhere along the way, I don't know when we started, getting an idea, hey, David's got a chance to break Avery Patton's record, single game scoring record. His last 2 shots of the game, he shot probably close to the attack line here at the volleyball court, almost 10 feet from the 3-point line. And to my recollection, which could be foggy, to my recollection, he had 2 people on him with both shots, and he drained super long threes, knocked the bottom out, and everybody just was in amazement in the crowd. We had a good crowd. Every night David went out was a career night for him because he played that way. He never took nights off. He just wanted to play, and he wanted to have fun, and he loved the game.
David played with all his heart. He cared about Trevecca, and that's been borne out over the years. He stayed in touch with us and still is proud to be a Trojan. And I think there's not a lot better that I could say, but that David has worked hard to create a good place for himself here in Nashville, and a part of that place is right here on the hill.